One of the things that we discussed before you came in was that we actually really admired that it's pretty often when someone has a great first act that the tendency is to hit the rinse and repeat button, right, and just sort of replay it.
Oh, it's tempting.
And it felt like you made a deliberate shift in the second season to try something new. And then with S-Town and kind of other things going on, it just felt like there was a curiosity and an instinct. And this makes more sense now to say, look, when you start with the story, it takes you down different structures rather than the other way around. And in a world where more and more, like everything, if you looked at market data, everything would say that people's attention spans are going like this, right?
Yeah.
And if you were to like really maybe go get market data and understand sort of what's winning and what YouTube videos are working and et cetera, it seems like the right outcome of this would have been to do a one-page infographic summarizing the case and the narrative and the outcome,
Or
right?
like top 10 things you need
exactly,
to know.
like 5 tips and tricks to the case, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
But in spite of all that, you went like maybe if it's possible to go 180 degrees the other direction
Right.
to like long-form journalism.
Right.
And, just kind of curious in your mind, I think even, when you won the Peabody Award, I guess, the podcast, it sort of validated the importance of that type of media.
Right.
And I just was curious sort of what you see now, and is it still something you really care deeply about versus sort of these highlight reels, et cetera?
Oh, I mean, totally. It's just like also not my nature. You may have noticed, like, I spend a long time answering questions. Like, I'm not a pithy. It's not my strength. No, I really, that was, I have to say, like the most thrilling thing. Not the most thrilling, but it was one of it was so gratifying. Yeah, that we had, we start the thing. We have no idea if this is interesting to anyone besides us. I mean, we had a little bit of a sense, but
what was the insight? Why did you go the other direction when it could have been?
Well, we don't do that kind of journalism anyway. Like I've never, you know what I mean? I've been a radio reporter I was a newspaper reporter for a long time. And yeah, you do shorter things, but I've been a radio reporter at that point for like a decade. It's just not what we do. It's not what we're interested in. And so my stories, in fact, over time at This American Life were getting longer. And finally I was just like, oh, just give her the hour. I was like taking up the whole hour just because that's where my interest lies. And in fact, the idea for Serial, the way I got that idea was that I was driving a lot in a certain period in like 2013. And I had to drive from where I live in Pennsylvania down to North Carolina a bunch of times for a story. And so I had these long drives. And so I was getting books on tape. And like the kind you get from your library with like the CD where you put it. Yeah. And I would get so absurd in the same way of just like, I didn't care suddenly that I had a 9-hour drive. I was like, fine, I'll listen to this novel. And I loved it. And I was like, why can't we do that on the radio? Like, I would love to do that with just like nonfiction, book on tape, nonfiction. We'll tell a story over time, chapter by chapter. Like, well, how about that? I'm into the long, and I love that. I love for myself, but also as a listener or a reader or a watcher of a documentary, I love getting immersed in a world and learning all about that world and sort of forgetting, the outside world. So that's what I wanted to do.
Is it safe to say maybe an important takeaway from that then is that it came from a deep place of authenticity, right? This wasn't like hey, I'm a short form writer, let me try this long form thing because I think it'd be cool, but like this sounds like it was your wheelhouse where it was your go-to?
No, I mean, I think like one of the luckiest, most wonderful things about working where I've worked for the past decade, which is the radio show That's American Life, is I've literally never heard anyone say, oh, here's what the listeners want, but the listeners want this, or people really love it when we do X. No one is talking that way. It's what are we interested in? What's exciting? What seems challenging? What seems fun? And that's a total position of privilege and luxury to be able to do that. Like, I recognize that. We have the company has the money to be able to sustain that, you know what I mean? And not worry too much about if people don't like a story, whatever. We thought it was important, or we thought it was good, or it was challenging in this way that seemed fun and exciting, so we tried it, and whatever, new show next week. You didn't like that one? Whatever, So we don't, there's just never been a like, what are the metrics, what's the data, let's try to satisfy it. We don't have to do that.